been raised which warrant answering, but I believe that we have to keep our eyes on the wider relationship and what is important here. There is clear shifting in the geopolitical tectonic plates. It is evident by what we are seeing, the rhetoric and the decisions coming from the North. It has implications for quality of life, for the movement of capital, for the conduct of trade and business, and for interpersonal relationships, because a lot of us have relatives in the North, and the extent to which we can go, whether there will be visa opportunities or closed opportunities or not, has all now become relevant in the current global conversation and current in the conversation that is taking place across our region. With the shifting of these tectonic plates, what we are noticing is that relationships and behaviors at the international relations level that we have taken for granted have changed completely and are changing every day. One almost does not know what to expect on the news anymore. With that, it has now become incumbent on us. It is clear that our relationships and what we had come to expect by way of international relations behavior relative to issues such as climate change, we can no longer expect. It is clear that what we had come to expect as a friend in the North who would give support and aid on basis where developing countries and poorer countries could expect to get support for health services, youth development, educational build-out, and things that apply to our development trajectory are now and cannot now be expected. All of that has been withdrawn overnight, without notice, and without any thought of the implications for countries that would have been completely dependent. Perhaps Barbados was not one of them, or the Caribbean perhaps was not, except maybe for one country in the Caribbean. But certainly, there are global implications for the policy decisions being made by our northern neighbor. Therefore, and in fact, what we are also seeing is that the nature of the relationship is becoming far more transactional. We have heard the expression, what cards are you holding? Almost non-diplomatic language that you don't hear leaders with, but it is clear that it is a very transactional kind of relationship. What cards can you put on the table? What do you have to trump my ace? That means that the quid pro quo, the way in which we engage, whether we have value or not, or are perceived as having value, has become all the more important. In a game where you are regarded as a minnow, where you do not self-define, but where those with power determine how you are to be treated and to what you are entitled, if anything at all, and use the weight of their foot to stamp on the metaphorical knee, to put their metaphorical knee on your neck, your socio-economic or environmental neck, or your development trajectory neck, you can be in very serious trouble. I think it was Senator Nichols who may have said earlier that really when you look at what is happening across the globe, we are living in an era where geopolitics as we understood it, where the power dynamics as we believe them to be, where who was powerful and who is not is changing completely. Whether people will walk softly and carry a big stick or walk loudly and beat you with the big stick that they're carrying has now become a question that those of us who are students of international relations are watching. Where threat may previously have been a last resort, where negotiation was the first step, all of that is now out the window. These are the politics of raw power without apology. In that environment, small island developing states must determine who their friends are going to be and what relationships they are going to have and what collaborations and levels of cooperation they will pursue so that together they will have greater presence, greater weight, greater protection, and greater power in the new marketplace, or this redefined socio-political and socio-economic environment. It is in this context that the government of Barbados has decided to throw its doors open to the Afrexim Bank and to create an opportunity here for them to do business, for Barbados to be its hub. It has relationships with 15 countries, I believe, in CARICOM, the 15 member states, but the hub, the base, will be here in Barbados. It is in the context of a new global environment and climate where funding is going to be far more scarce and access to resources, because private capital will sometimes follow the direction or the hints or the persuasion of the government. So if government is posturing in a particular way, private capital will take its hint from government. And therefore, there may be less capital available investing southward, or lending southward, or being available to countries in the south. It is therefore critical, and it is no accident, that you are seeing the build out of the banks from the global south, the Development Bank of China, the Development Bank of Brazil, the BRICS Bank, the Development Bank of Africa. These are not accidents. And the point that I was making is that the world is actually standing on the precipice of a tectonic shift. And that is going to have very serious implications. And in that atmosphere, we must be able to turn to new friends, to look for new access to capital, to have new relationships, and to say we are friends of all and satellites of none, because we are pursuing the national strategic interests above all else. It is critical, therefore, that we continue to support our relationship with the Afrexim Bank. And I note, I found quite interesting, that all kinds of concessions are given to hotel properties. To cost you less, I'm told. To all kinds of entities and organizations coming to Barbados. They are given free passage. They are given all kinds of tax incentives and tax write-offs. There are some that will never pay tax in my lifetime, thanks to the Democratic Labour Party. And it is amazing that they are calling for transparency, a government that was known by its mantra to punish people with silence. But now they feel that we have to be transparent, and everything that they are discussing is being discussed because we have it out in the public domain. It is not a secret. And therefore, in building this relationship, we have to consider that people with a common historical root may very well have a shared and common future and must build that shared and common future together. Contrary to what some may believe, Mr. President, I'm really very much pro this relationship with Africa. It was my honor to negotiate the visit of the President of Kenya, which started this new Africa-Caribbean relationship. When I was ambassador to the UN, and it started because I knew somebody who was high placed in the Kenyan government. I got a twig that the president was planning to come to the Caribbean. Barbados was not on his schedule. And I was able to intervene immediately, negotiate, and then call the Prime Minister and say, I've just done this. What is your reaction? And she said, Thompson, just no, but if you know that you have the confidence of your Prime Minister, and if you know that you have the experience and skill to see where something can lead, and that initial conversation created what would become the relationship with the rest of CARICOM, the conversation about new trade and business, and in fact, the possibility for air and other links. These conversations are important. It was also my honor to co-chair the CARICOM committee for the establishment of the African-Caribbean relationship at the UN, a new grouping, AFCAR. It hasn't done particularly well because COVID intervened, and many of those of us who were the ambassadors leading the charge at that time left the UN, but it certainly has scope for bringing new dynamics into the UN negotiating space because of the number of countries in CARICOM and in Africa. And if we could hold together as a cohesive unit, then we can exert tremendous influence on that space and on the multilateral space. I believe, sir, in giving young people exposure, just a little personal, sir. And at the time, when my niece turned 21, I wanted her to see a civilization that was much older than the West, and to understand that there is more to life than New York and London. And I took her to China. And when my nephew turned 21, I took him to Africa. I took him to Kenya. And I think that our young people have to have a sense of history. They have to have a sense of self. They have to understand who they are. They have to understand that there are Black brothers and sisters in Africa from whom we were separated, and that there are those who have an interest in never letting us understand what we have contributed as Black people to global civilization, because they want us always to look in the mirror and see nothingness, because that is how they define us. So this is important to me. It is important to me because when the tectonic plates continue to shift, sir, it is going to be critical that we have alliances, relationships, collaborations, and things in place to immediately pivot for new support and new ways of doing business. Trade is going to become more important. There are more people living in Africa than there are in the United States. Barbados is geographically positioned. I remember, Barbados is geographically positioned in such a way that when you come across the Atlantic, Barbados is your first land call. It is therefore strategically well placed for aviation opportunities across the globe. It is well placed for shipping and trading opportunities across the globe. It is well placed to move tourists from particular locations across the Atlantic and across the Pacific. These are opportunities that are going to increasingly become available to us in this new global atmosphere. So, and we have to keep watching and listening to see what is happening and when we are to take the opportunity that is available. I found it fascinating, sir. And I was making the point earlier about some of the concessions and incentives and so on given to other organizations and entities that I have never before heard complaint about any organization, particularly those coming from certain parts of the world. But the instant you are seeking to support an African originating bank, all of a sudden they cannot be trusted with piece of land. We shouldn't give them anything. Are you getting anything out of it? Nobody has ever questioned before. What are the relationships and what are the benefits to be derived from having a UN house or any of the other organizations or entities that have built on Barbadian land or that have been given concessions and incentives? Barbados will be the hub, and when this major geopolitical shift takes place, Barbados is going to be the hub of a major development bank right here in this small country. Monies are going to transit the economy because of it. Whether they build a trade center or a hotel, there will be jobs resulting from it. And let me pause to treat to this issue of Barbadians getting construction jobs. Barbadians are getting so many construction jobs that we had to establish the construction gateway to train and retrain and beg people to come into construction, to do rapid training in order to have them equipped for the jobs available. Because I know that the Dems would not understand what it is to have 9 hotels building at the same time, because not even one hotel was built in the 10 years that they were in office. Not one. But now we have 9 under construction simultaneously. So the problem is not whether Bajans will get jobs. The problem is finding enough Bajans to give all of the jobs to. And it isn't only, you cannot find tradespeople. And when you find tradespeople, and I can tell you that, sir, because I'm attempting to put up a house. When you find tradespeople, they are demanding top dollar. And they will take 3 jobs at the same time. They're coming at you today, they're going at me tomorrow, and next week they buy some, and the following there at somebody else. And you can't quarrel, you have to wait patiently. You cannot even get a gardener to come by you anymore. That is why unemployment is so low in Barbados. But it isn't only that there will be jobs in construction. Part of what is being done, and I'm going to make 2 points. One is that what the activity in the economy is not only generating blue-collar jobs, it is generating jobs for all our graduates. It is generating jobs at every level. The people are not bringing a full plane loads of staff to work in the train center or the hotel. Barbadians will be managers in management positions. Barbadians will be handling IT. Barbadians are going to be doing front and back office. Barbadians will be hosts and chefs. If it is trade, interpreters, Barbadians will be getting this job. And the question is going to be whether we are training a sufficiently multi-skilled labor force to get all the jobs. If we are talking about the Africa Bank, I'm just going to, I keep getting tongue-tied with it, sir. Afrexim, the Zim Bank, sir. If we're going to be talking about the Zim Bank, I need to make another point, and it is this. We are in a position where, because of the relationship now with Rwanda, we are going to be producing pharmaceuticals here in Barbados. And the pharmaceutical industry is a huge industry and a huge profit-making industry. It means that all kinds of students from UWI who are trained in a range of sciences will now be getting jobs in these fields. That Barbados will become a research center for diseases and for vaccine production and so on. You know, sir, that we were extremely disadvantaged in the marketplace to be in the early days before the Prime Minister went out and engaged in the strongest way because the competition and the prices for COVID vaccines were so high, and because the developed countries where the drugs were being manufactured in large part were hoarding for their own populations. You could not get access. Barbados was able to get access early because of the work of Prime Minister Motley, and then was able to share with other Caribbean countries. And later on, Guyana, I think, also did a reciprocal arrangement in sharing with us. So when you talk about this new bank, that is the kind of activity that they are going to help to support and be engaged in. And really, in building out our relationship with Africa, and it is, why build it out? Build it out because you're talking about a large marketplace. Build it out because you are talking about people with whom you share a common history. Build it out because when you walk down cities in Africa, you could almost see people who look like your brother or sister or an aunt or uncle. Such is the biological and other closeness. Build it out because it makes good strategic sense given what is happening in the world. There cannot be the sort of bipolar world that we have now with North and South. There has to be a more multipolar world. And in addition to that, not only are new countries going to rise and take places of precedence, new voices from the South are going to emerge and are already emerging. And Barbadians should be proud that Mayor Motley's voice is one of the voices from the South that has tremendous global weight at this time. And that kind, voices that are speaking with moral authority, voices that are speaking with intellectual depth, voices that are speaking with a level of innovation and creation. But more important, and this is what makes Mayor Motley so popular at the global level, voices that are speaking with a level of empathy and humanity for this common person, for the suffering of people, for the dignity of people. Those are the voices that are going to be the voices of the present and the voices of the future, not the ones that say deport them and let us not look back. Not the ones that, and I'm going to make the point here, sir, that part, yes, if you come from an ever so welcome way for call, philosophy and tradition, then you will not understand that open borders are going to be part of the definition of the future, despite the right-wing governments that are rising across the globe at the moment. And we are going to have to make determinations about how we grow our population, what kind of skills we are going to have and invest in, and what is the nature of the relationships that is going to carry us forward. We are already seeing, sir, the withdrawal from important treaties and important multilateral organizations. But that does not mean that the rest of the globe is not going to form its own cohesive body to fight against, for every action there is a counter reaction. And therefore, what we are going to see is a rethinking and a new approach at the multilateral level to how we deal with issues of power, to how we deal with issues of trade, to the nature of the alliances with which you would want to be part. Certainly, self-help is going to be of greater importance, and generating business on our own will take on new levels of significance. And that is why we are creating a welcoming environment for this bank. Really, that is what this is about. It is about creating a welcome environment for a bank in a global situation that is changing rapidly around us, when we have to think of what our relationships are going to be. It is part, sir, of our resilience building. You see, it is all right for some people to say that 31 weeks of import cover is way too much, lick it out. Spend it, get rid of it. But in a shifting international environment where you have no idea what is going to happen from one day to the next, where you've already dealt with freak storms, Elsa, Beryl, Ashfall, and where anything else could happen at the environmental level, you must hold high reserves to protect your population and to cushion your country against the external or exogenous shocks that are coming at it. Mr. President, you've signaled to me that I'm out of time. But it is clear to me that this emerging relationship with Africa and the institutions of Africa is going to, as the harbinger for us of increased trade, improved shipping ties, improved aviation ties, and Barbados becoming a hub for activity across the countries of the South, as South-South cooperation becomes the platform on which we, as a new global South, as a global South under threat, construct our well-being for countries and populations. Mr. President, I'm much obliged.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Honor, Senator, the Most Honorable Daisy Elizabeth Thompson. Senator Walters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I promised it wouldn't be long. I did not plan to contribute to this resolution, but just to say a few words. I think sometimes, from my observations, I've seen many debates in this chamber where the members of the government have used it to showcase their oratory skills and to prove to each other that, or to prove to the Prime Minister who is better than who, and who is not better than who.